Welcome back to the deep dive. This time we're cracking open a real classic, Excerpts from Pollyanna by Eleanor H. Porter.
Okay.
We're going to be going deeper than just the,
Right.
saccharine sweet girl kind of image that we have of this story, and really diving into some of the themes.
Yeah.
Get ready for some unexpected twists, some
Yeah.
really moving moments, and maybe even like a new perspective on human nature.
Okay.
So let's unpack this a little bit.
What's fascinating about Pollyanna is how it plays with this idea of optimism, especially at a time when society was grappling with some huge shifts.
All right.
We're thinking early 20th century, industrialization, all of these anxieties of modern life are kind of creeping in.
Right from the start, we are thrown into this contrast when 11-year-old orphan Pollyanna shows up at her wealthy Aunt Polly's.
Yes.
It's like sunshine hitting a mausoleum.
Yeah.
Personality-wise.
It is more than just a clash of personalities, though. Aunt Polly really embodies that Victorian ideal of duty, almost a fear of joy being frivolous.
Right.
Pollyanna is disruptive. Her glad game, finding something to be glad about in every situation, challenges that whole worldview.
Like she's glad to get crutches because she doesn't need them.
Right.
It's almost comical.
Yeah.
But also, is it really that simple?
That's the brilliance of Porter's writing. On the surface, it's this charming anecdote, but look closer and you see the glad game as a coping mechanism. It's not ignoring hardship, but intentionally shifting focus. There's resilience there, almost a proto-cognitive behavioral therapy happening a century early.
Oh, okay, so that's really interesting. So it's not just her being naive, it's a deliberate choice.
Absolutely.
But how does this affect the other characters?
Well, let's take Nancy the maid. Initially, she's like us readers.
Yeah.
A bit skeptical, glad game, sounds nice.
Yeah.
But in a household as strict as Aunt Polly's, it's almost rebellious.
And Nancy's seen it all, the societal pressures, probably the downsides of wealth, too.
Right.
So why does she change?
Because Pollyanna isn't just talking about joy, she's living it. That genuineness is infectious. It's like she holds up a mirror, making Nancy and us question, when did we become so cynical?
Right, and then there's Mrs. Snow, who's practically defined by her illnesses, bitterness radiating off the page.
Yes.
Pollyanna doesn't shy away from that, does she?
This is where some critics struggle with the book. Is Mrs. Snow's transformation believable? Maybe not by modern literary standards, but what Porter captures is that fascination with invalidism of the era. Women especially were almost expected to be frail, defined by their ailments. Pollyanna birthed that bubble, almost a threat to the social order by simply being vibrantly healthy.
So Pollyanna is accidentally revolutionary.
Yeah.
I like that. But not everyone is won over immediately, right? Enter John Pendleton, our resident cynic.
John Pendleton is crucial. His cynicism isn't just personal grumpiness. It reflects a wave of disillusionment among intellectuals of the time. Think post-Darwin. The old certainties are crumbling. He's carrying the weight of the world, almost like he's choosing to be unhappy.
And Pollyanna, bless her heart, tries to glad game him too.
Right.
What's fascinating is how their connection kind of unfolds alongside this huge reveal, John's past with Aunt Polly.
This is where Porter layers in the romance element. But it's not just for plot. That second chance theme speaks to a yearning for connection, particularly potent after the isolation of war. It's like Pollyanna represents that hope for a less jaded world, a world John had maybe given up on.
It's a lot more complex than I first thought. I'm starting to see these characters as more than just archetypes.
Exactly. And that's just scratching the surface. We haven't even touched on Jimmy Bean yet, but that's a story for part 2 of our deep dive. For now, I'm curious, what's resonating with you so far? What aspect of Pollyanna's world are you finding most intriguing? Picking up on that thread of yearning for connection. Jimmy Bean, the runaway orphan, adds a whole new layer to Pollyanna.
He's such a heartbreaker, wanting a common home, a mother. It's like he represents that universal need for belonging, something that Pollyanna, despite being an orphan herself, kind of has with Aunt Polly, even if it's a bit stuffy.
And it's not just that he's an orphan. It's that he embodies those anxieties of a changing society. The idealized family unit was starting to fracture. Urbanization was uprooting people. Jimmy is almost a symbol of those left behind by progress.
So Pollyanna trying to find him a home is almost her trying to fix a bigger problem. Like, she can't solve poverty, but she can try to give one kid stability.
Exactly. It highlights that tension between individual action and societal forces. And it's through Jimmy that the glad game faces.
Right.
It's the biggest challenge. Remember when Pollyanna gets injured? Suddenly finding things to be glad about isn't so easy.
That's where I almost put the book down. It just felt too cruel, even for a story from that time. But then it shifts, right?
Yeah.
It's not Pollyanna being cheerful. It's the town that rallies around her.
This is where Porter's genius for social commentary comes in. On one hand,
Yeah.
it's heartwarming. Everyone from Mrs. Snow sending a blue ribbon to Mrs. Benton wearing color. But it also speaks to that era's anxieties about community breakdown, as if by helping Pollyanna, they're reaffirming the bonds they fear are disappearing.
So it's not just about one girl's recovery. It's about a town finding its soul again.
Yeah.
That's a whole new dimension, too. Those small acts of kindness you mentioned earlier.
And it's not Pollyanna orchestrating this. She's literally bedridden. The impact of her glad game has been this slow burn, changing people without them realizing it.
Yeah.
It makes you think. What seemingly insignificant actions of ours might have a ripple effect we never see.
Okay, now I'm getting chills. But let's address the elephant in the attic room, John Pendleton and Aunt Polly. Turns out they weren't past lovers.
Yeah.
Talk about a plot twist.
It's a clever move by Porter. First, it subverts expectations, or we're primed for that romance and bam, denied. But it also forces Pollyanna to confront that her optimism isn't all-powerful. There are realities she can't glad game away.
It's heartbreaking seeing her disillusioned. But is it also a good thing? Like she's growing up, realizing life's more complex.
Absolutely. And it deepens the relationships. John Pendleton is angry, not just at the misunderstanding, but maybe at himself, for letting Pollyanna's hope touch him. Their argument is actually one of the most emotionally honest scenes in the book.
Then to make things even more complicated, we have Dr. Chilton, who is falling for Aunt Polly. It's almost like Pollyanna's matchmaking energy got redirected.
But that's where the symbolism of the prism comes in. It's not just a pretty gift from John Pendleton. It's about how light can be broken apart, refracted. Pollyanna's influence is like that, hitting different people in unexpected ways.
So the prism foreshadows that Pollyanna's glad game won't always have the outcome she expects, but it still creates change.
Precisely. And it sets up one of the most moving scenes. Jimmy Bean overhearing about the potential cure for Pollyanna's paralysis. That's not glad game thinking. That's pure selfless action, inspired by what he's learned from her. He risked everything to tell Aunt Polly.
Okay, now I'm tearing up. It's like Jimmy Bean is the embodiment of how Pollyanna's influence goes beyond words. It's about how she makes people act differently.
And that act, that tiny ripple from Jimmy Bean, sets off a cascade. Aunt Polly contacting Dr. Chilton, the specialist being called. It all hinges on that one courageous moment. And that takes us right to the climax of the story, which we'll delve into in the final part of our deep dive.
That cliffhanger from last time, with Jimmy Bain spilling the beans to Aunt Polly, talk about a turning point. It's like all the glad game ripples converge on that moment.
It's more than just plot momentum. Think about it. Aunt Polly, who's all about control, has to surrender to the chaos that Jimmy brings. And it's that surrender that allows for healing for Pollyanna, but also for Aunt Polly herself.
So it's like by letting go of her need to manage everything, Aunt Polly opens the door for something bigger than herself.
Exactly. She reaches out to Dr. Chilton, swallowing her pride, maybe even admitting she was wrong about the potential of Pollyanna to walk again. That's huge for someone like Aunt Polly.
And then things move fast. Dr. Chilton re-examines Pollyanna. Suddenly there's a specialist from New York. It's almost like the universe conspired to make it happen once that first domino fell.
This is where some readers find the ending too neat, too fairy tale-like. But I think Porter is playing with those expectations. Remember, this book was written in a time when medical advancements were happening at a rapid pace. There was a genuine belief that science could conquer anything.
So Pollyanna's recovery isn't just about her individual strength. It's also about tapping into that societal faith and progress. Like she's riding the wave of optimism about the future.
Precisely. And it's not just Pollyanna. Look at Dr. Chilton. He goes from being skeptical to championing her case, even bringing in his colleague from New York. It's like he's got the glad game bug, too.
And that's where we get that unexpected romance blossoming between him and Aunt Polly. It's so sweet, especially with them getting married right in Pollyanna's hospital room. Talk about a celebration.
It's more than just a happy ending, though. Think about what it represents. Aunt Polly, who is so rigid and bound by tradition, has found love with someone who challenges her, someone who embodies that same forward-thinking spirit that Pollyanna represents.
So it's like Pollyanna's influence has created this ripple effect of love and transformation that extends beyond her own recovery. It's like she's the catalyst for everyone else's happy ending, too.
And that's what makes Pollyanna Such a powerful and enduring story. It's not just about one girl's journey. It's about the interconnectedness of our lives, the ways in which our actions, however small, can have a profound impact on the world around us.
Wow, we've covered so much ground in this deep dive, from the power of perspective to the resilience of the human spirit. Pollyanna really packs a punch. But before we wrap up, I want to turn to you, our listener. What's your biggest takeaway from this exploration of Pollyanna? What resonated with you the most?
Perhaps you see a bit of yourself in one of the characters, or maybe you're inspired to find your own something to be glad about, even amidst life's challenges,
Right.
whatever your reflection may be. We hope this deep dive has sparked a new appreciation for this classic tale and its timeless messages.
Thank you for joining us on this journey into the heart of Pollyanna. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a fascinating topic. Until then, keep playing the glad game.